Well, I'm here with Tim and Paul, two brilliant young men I coach, and I have a lot of respect for these two fellows. And both Paul and Tim have been talking about establishing a real estate investment trust, I guess, for a few years, right, guys?
Yeah, it's been for the past 2 years.
Past 2 years, and I like the idea. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a few slides, and we're going to talk through the issues around forming a REIT. But before we actually get into the details of it, what I wanted to do, I'll share my screen with you guys now, is that there really, as far as I know, there really are three different types of sort of, I don't even know what to call them, organizations, I guess, that you could consider. Obviously, a real estate investment trust is one of them. And I'm sure you guys have thought about MICs as well, mortgage investment corporations. That would be correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And the third one, which you can see on the screen here at the top, next to that really handsome guy on the screen, on the slide, is a private equity fund. And what I'd like you at least to think about is which one is right for you. And maybe it is the REIT, that's what you wanted to do, but it also might be a private equity fund. It might be. And, of the three, I'm going to be upfront with you guys. My favorite is private equity. And most people don't think about it, but I do think you should at least consider it. Okay. So I'll just show you a few slides. All right.
Okay.
All right. So how to start your own private equity fund. You guys are familiar with private equity, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So private equity firms have been around for a while. They've been a historically quite successful asset class. And this is a very fast growing area today, tremendous. And I do think private equity has some advantages over both MICs and REITs, because it gives you guys, if you form your own private equity fund, gives you more flexibility, I think, in how you roll it out, what kind of investments you can do, and what you do with the money. And we'll come to what a REIT is, in the sense that, a very significant portion of income you generate from a real estate investment trust has to go to the trust holders. I'm sure you know that, right? Okay, I'm going to turn off my email, otherwise every 5 seconds I'm going to hear that ding dong. All right. So let's just look at what it might look like. Over the last few decades, demand for private equity funds has really increased, both from individual investors and from institutional investors. And for you guys, if you're going to build, whether it's a REIT or you're going to build a private equity fund or even a mortgage investment corporation, I think if you could get some institutional money, that would really make a difference. There's one group that I'm helping right now in Eastern Canada. You guys are based in Western Canada, and they were going to do a REIT, might be a mortgage investment corporation, but eventually I don't know if I had any influence, but they did decide to go with a private equity fund, and they were able to get, I think, $30 million of institutional money to, as a seed fund. And that's pretty good. I think there were 2 or 3 groups, pension funds, that put the money up. I think there were 3 $10 million pieces. And I don't have to tell you guys what it's like to raise money $150,000 at a time. That takes a lot of...
We know.
I've done it too. And I think I'd rather be, hung, drawn, and quartered than have to go out and raise $30 million or $300 million, $150,000 at a time. People have done it. It's a lot of work. All right. So accredited investors is certainly one possible source of capital for any of these 3 vehicles. But institutional money it can be a lot faster. And these guys have launched successfully with $30 million. So what do you have to do when you're launching a private equity fund? It's very similar to what you would do with a REIT. You have to outline your business strategy. And I highlighted for you this, and you have to differentiate your financial plan from those of your competitors. And I have a very specific idea that I think would help you, whether you formed a REIT or a mortgage investment corporation or private equity fund. I think there's a piece of differentiation. I think I may have described it to you before, but we're going to definitely go through it today. that will help you focus your business strategy. And then, typically as well, in these private equity funds, you have a theme to it, right? So you are interested in, like you see on the screen here, energy development, you're interested in biotech, you're interested in social media, whatever it might be. You're interested in TikTok creators. I don't know, you have a theme to your fund. And for you, I beg your pardon?
You have to pick a niche.
But for you, I think it's probably going to be real estate related, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, good, because we're all three of us are mostly involved in real estate, or at least, yeah. And then typically you write a business plan, but this is a little bit outdated, okay? That's an outdated strategy. Today, almost nobody I coach in this area, and I have a few people doing this, not just in Canada, but in the United States as well, we aren't doing business plans anymore. What we're doing is we're doing slide decks. If you send somebody a 40 or 50 or even 60-page business plan to read, people aren't really that keen on doing that. Whereas if you have a really great slide deck, you can do, you've seen some of my kind of corny voiceover videos, but you can do, obviously a video based on a slide deck that is pretty cool, better than mine. And those are the things that you can send to, pension funds or other REITs or other institutional investors that might be interested in investing. Again, it doesn't matter whether it's private equity, REIT, or mortgage investment corporation. So I would probably go with a slide deck before I would spend any time and money on a business plan. Does that make any sense?
For institutional investors as well?
Yep. The one we just, the funding we just finished off last month in September was all done on Zoom, and it was all done with slide decks.
Okay.
So we did not do we absolutely did not. So the guys, we worked on the slide deck. They did a voiceover video, so we had a summary of it. So it was quite short. When I say short, it was about 8 or 10 minutes, and then the actual presentation that we did was about 25 minutes, and then there was a Q&A afterwards. And we had, I think, 8 institutions on the call, and we got 3 of them to sign up.
Wow.
So that was pretty good. So that was $30 million, and we raised that over a period of about 2 months. Most of that time spent, on the slide deck, and a couple of voiceover videos. And the other thing that I think would probably help you in any of these vehicles would be to have a decent advisory board. Not too many people want to actually sit on the board, sit on your board of directors, and you guys already know that. But sometimes you can get some pretty impressive people to serve on an advisory board. So they don't have any legal obligations to the company or the company to them. And generally they're not paid. They just agree to lend their name to what you're doing. So that's another thing that you might consider doing.
You've considered that already.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. Now, a typical private equity fund is a limited partner or limited partnership and a general partner. Do you guys know what a limited partnership is?
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah, I have a limited GSR structured in a general and GP as and
Right. So you guys would be the general partner, and let's say an institution or an individual put in $10 million. Their obligations and their responsibilities are limited solely to the investment and nothing else. They have no management responsibilities. They don't want management responsibilities. And if you lose all of their money, that's too bad, but you can't come after them. No creditors can come after them and say, hey, we want more. They're limited partners, and they're limited in liability to whatever their original investment is. You guys know all of that. It isn't cheap to set these things up, whether you do mortgage investment corp, REIT, or private equity fund. I'm afraid to look at your bills from your accountants and your lawyers. There's going to be, quite a bit of legal fees and accounting fees. And so you're going to have to think about how you as the general partner will be compensated. you know, there's all kinds of different compensations that you can dream up. And these are a couple of ideas and suggestions that come from Investopedia, but I'm not going to deal with these because I have my own view of the subject, and I'm going to deal with that in a minute, if that's okay with you guys.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Of course, you're going to have to raise capital, and you know, that's really probably, you know, 80% of the battle. I think 20% of the battle is differentiation, and 80% is raising capital. You know, and maybe 1 or 2% somewhere else, you know, is everything else. But raising capital and also making sure that your fund has enough sex appeal. I know you guys know this, but believe it or not, bankers, pension funds, insurance companies, institutional investors, you would think that they invest in something, and for that matter, private investors, you know, accredited investors, you would think that they would invest in your vehicle, whatever it is, because of, you know, hard-hearted analytical analysis, you know, spreadsheets that they've done. That tends to be absolutely BS. You guys are probably aware of the fact that today in 2020, a huge growing industry is special purpose corporations that are funded without actually having any business plan or any model at all. Are you aware of that?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Although I've heard startups are doing really well. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, no, there's special purpose corporations that say, hey, listen, Tim and Paul are thinking about doing something really cool. They don't know what it is. They need $100 million. They have a good track record. You guys ought to put your money in. They're called special purpose corporations, and they're publicly traded, and they don't actually have a blueprint. Now, personally, I wouldn't put $5 of my money into something like that, where you literally are burning. But billions and billions of dollars this year have flooded into these special purpose corporations, but basically based on the credibility of the people behind them. So at the end of the day, Tim and Paul, the people who will put money into this are backing you and your idea. In the case of the special purpose corporation, they're just backing the guy, you know, or the man or woman or the team, right? That they say, well, these guys have a good track record. I'm going to put $10 million of my money into that and support them. But that just reinforces the principle I'm trying to get across here, which is that at the end of the day, most of the decisions to invest are based on your credibility and your sexy presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. If you get somebody on the call, it does happen. If you get somebody on the call who wants to drill down into, you know, into the minutiae of a 20, you know, page spreadsheet, that person will never invest.
Yeah.
Because they will always find a reason. Oh, well, you made a mistake on page 13. You said it was 1.29%. It was actually 1.28. Aha.
Yeah.
And so when you get somebody like that on the call, you end the call. So,
Yeah.
listen, thanks so much for your time today. I really am time pressed. We're going to move on. Adios. Now, I do that, actually. I terminate those calls because you're never going to get a deal out of those people. All right. So in my opinion, you do have to have a concept. You do have to have a focus. You do have to have a theme. You do have to have differentiation. You do have to have credibility. But at the end of the day, you're appealing to the reptilian brain, you know, which has to be simple, and it has to be sexy, it has to be exciting. And that's why people do it. And, you know, I have had people invest with me over the years simply because they like the adventure. You know, Firestone has been an adventure machine. You probably know that, right? I think, Paul, you know that about me. Some of the adventures have worked out really well and some have not. But even so, my credibility, even on some of the adventures that didn't work, it did take a hit for sure. But you know, I don't seem to be suffering any repercussions. I mean, you know, we had a $485 million bankruptcy of the Ottawa Senators in the mid-2000s. And, you know, and some of my friends, many of my friends invested along with me. I mean, I invested 55.3% $6 million of my own money, and I got back $3,500. So you can imagine some of my friends, like Mike Copeland from Corel Corporation, the McCain family, if you know McCain's Fries, if you know those guys, Harrison and Wallace McCain, they put some money in as well, you know, and obviously they lost their money. I lost my money. I think we got 0.00001 cent out of the bankruptcy, so something really small. But you know, they enjoyed the adventure, and of course they're very wealthy people, so you know it's horrible to lose. In my case, $55.6 million. You know, in Mike's case, it was a couple of million. Harrison and Wallace McCain, I think a couple of million. Roger Greenberg from Minto Corporation, I think 4 or 5 million. So these are big numbers, but to these people, it's, you know, it's kind of like for the McCains, that's like, you know, a cup of coffee at Tim Hortons. All right. So it's manageable, right? And nobody was mad at me, thank God, even though I was responsible. So we do need to obviously have a strategy on how to raise capital, and I really would strongly recommend you know, that at least part of your capital would be raised in chunks of $5 or $10 million, possibly from institutional investors, as opposed to everything being 150,000 or 250,000 at a time.
That's certainly the goal, Bruce.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. And the good news about private equity is that it really has outperformed, you know, U.S. markets over the last few decades. It's not just you know, 4 or 5 year track record. It has done very well. And you know, what would you get today, Tim, if you put, you know, say you put $10 million in your bank account? You know, if you're an institution, what do you think you're earning on that?
1/4%.
How much?
1/4%, or
it's not very much.
On a GIC.
Yeah, a few years ago now, my students and I did a study on the big cash hoards held by, I think at that time, Google, Facebook, and Apple. And they had, you know, a few tens of billions of dollars of cash back then. Today, they have a few hundreds of billions of dollars of cash on their balance sheet. And I'm going to ask Paul. Paul, guess what the average return was for Apple's, you know, I don't know, back then, 40 or 50 or 60 billion dollars of cash?
Oh, I'd say it's minimal too, but maybe 2%.
Yeah, that's a good guess. I would have guessed around 2%. I have it on my computer, so I'm going from memory, but it was, I think, about 1.1 or 1.2%. And that's pretty low. And there are a lot of very, very smart people at Google and very smart people at Facebook and Apple, and I'm sure Amazon has a huge cash hoard as well. There are a lot of smart people there, but that's about what they can do. Some of them are in the 0.9% range, not quite as low as what you were saying earlier, Tim, but you know, 0.9, 1, 1.1, 1.2, I think might have been the highest number. So if you could put, you know, some of, you know, a few, I mean, you know, a few $1 billion into a private equity fund that performs much better, you know, 7 or 8 or 10 or 12% returns are certainly doable, maybe even more. That's a lot better than the 1 or 1.1%. I think that most of these large companies, you know, are seeing, and pension funds and insurance companies and even banks are really not much better at that. So before I go through this, I just want to describe to you what I think is the key differentiator here. Okay. If you run a real estate investment trust, you can buy, you know, a portfolio of warehouses, you know, that are hopefully are fully leased. You know, I doubt you would buy office buildings, right? Because office buildings right now are an asset class in crisis, right?
Yep. Unless we're going to repurpose it and we get it really cheap, then that'd be the only.
Right. No, I agree with that. But real estate investment trusts have to be careful because they are really committed to distributing significant percentage of their revenues. So they can't really get into, although they do, they probably shouldn't really get into the development or redevelopment business. They probably shouldn't, Tim. But that certainly isn't the case in all matters. Okay, in all cases, and I'll give you an example of one that is involved in the development industry, and maybe they're regretting it. I don't know. But as a general rule, if I were running a REIT and I was advising you two fellows, and you were running a REIT, I would say, let's buy a portfolio of buildings, in sectors that are internet resistant and COVID resistant. And one of those categories is almost assuredly the industrial sector. Industrial production in Canada, Stats Canada reported, is up 20% this year. That's a lot. And the reason for that is that Canadians right across this country, large companies, small companies, Bruce Firestone, we have decided that our international supply chain partners are no longer reliable. I mean, I'm not just talking about China. China is not a friend to Canada and is not a reliable partner at this point in history. That is true. And that was true even before COVID whacked the planet. So I'm not blaming the Chinese, but I do say that they are not a reliable international partner in the supply chain. And, and nor is the United States. That is a real surprise, at least to me. We have had at least 100 years of cooperation between Canada and the United States. For example, you may or may not know this, Canada and the United States have treaties between the two nations that if there is a war, that we will pool resources of, energy resources, for example. So if the United States and Canada were involved in a war and there was a shortage of oil, and oil is a really important part of warfighting capability, we have an agreement between the two countries to share and to pool our resources and to use it as best we can to defend North America. And so when the current US administration, and I'm not making a political statement here, fellas, but when the current administration told 3M that they could not export N95 masks to Canada during this pandemic, that is in breach of so many, not only treaties between the two countries, but also convention, that it rang alarm bells. You trust me, in Ottawa, at the highest levels here, from the Prime Minister down, it rang alarm bells. And in every boardroom across Canada, they went, holy smokes, our American friends are shutting the border. That is a real big problem for a country like ours that does 85% or maybe even 90% of our trade with the United States. So that is a very, very serious situation for us. It may change, but right now it's a big problem. So just to give you a trivial example, this year, I bought not one, not two, but 3 lawnmowers. And, my wife and I, we own a few properties, not as many as I used to before the Sens went bankrupt, but we own a few. And I wrecked our lawnmower. Yeah, I did it. So we bought a brand new Honda mower, and out of the box, it just didn't work. So we took it back, bought a Toro mower, and out of the box, it didn't work. And so we bought a Toro lawnmower floor model, and it worked for 20 minutes and then quit. And so, it is kind of funny. And so, properties that we owned, the grass was growing really tall, and I had to call our neighbors and say, it's not that we're ignoring our properties and our tenants, I just told them the story. So as you both know, I think I'm a strong believer in the micro workshop model, where you have little tiny gigpreneurs. And I rented a spot a few years ago now to a small company that does computer controlled machinery, and they do parts and prototyping for the tech industry. But in COVID-19, their order book has gone wild, So I actually went to them, and it was a little spring that had bust on the floor model, and I said, can you guys machine this for me? And they said, absolutely. And they didn't charge me anything, but they should have. They just were friendly, and they made a spring for me, and I put it in the Toro mower, and my project manager, property managers were able to cut the grass. But that's a trivial example, but it's happening to millions of people across Canada, and hundreds and maybe even tens of thousands of companies. And so I wasn't surprised when Stats Canada, they appeared to be surprised. 20% increase. Same as thing is happening in the United States, but a smaller percentage, but from a much bigger base. They're up 4%. Okay, so office buildings are going down like this. I have clients who own, big shopping centers, like, 750,000 square feet, 3 million square feet. The client of mine who owns shopping plazas, one of them anyway, 750,000 square feet, 65% of their stores are closed and can't pay their rent. My other client who has 3 million square feet, 90% of his stores are closed and can't pay their rent. So it would be a really bad idea for a REIT who's expected to perform, or for that matter, a private equity fund who's supposed to perform, to buy asset classes that are collapsing the way they are. But so if you bought a portfolio of industrial properties that you could, nurse along and increase the cap rate over time, that would probably be a good investment. So you guys have got to think about the theme for your business, and you've got to think about your niche. That's really important, okay? And so one asset class that I would certainly buy would be industrial. And the other reason I would go after industrial, but it's entirely, of course, up to you, is that there's too much competition in the residential rental property, that class. I mean, the cap rates are terrible, and we sold a portfolio to a REIT recently. It was I guess about 5,000 units of 3.3 or 3.4% cap rate.
Well, can I give a little background there, Bruce? So as far as the differentiator is concerned, there was going to be 3 different components of what we were going to do.
Right.
And I created an offer memorandum and went through the ringer with that for a whole year. So the 3 different things, and the private equity guys really love this, is that to pay the hurdle rates and do all of that, we were going to do roughly a third lending because it's quick and it's easy. Underwritten properly, it makes money.
So you're going to do a third in what?
A third in lending.
Yeah.
So second mortgages, bridge financing, that type of thing. So that's one silo. The second one would be value add apartment buildings. And then the third silo is going to be purpose-built development for rentals. So to build rental new, not build condos for sale. So just a little bit about the model, and the private equity guys that I spoke to that about with my initial conversations, they love the fact that there's those 3 pillars.
I like those three pillars, but the one that I would at least challenge you on, Tim, is to add maybe a 4th one, which would be industrial. I'm telling you, I own a few industrial buildings, and I honest to God, I wish I had more of them. The nice thing about industrial is I've got lots of industrial tenants. When something goes wrong, they never call me. If the toilet doesn't work or the plumbing is busted, they don't call me. They just, I'm just gonna fix it. And they pay their bills, they have money, and the cap rates are much better than residential. I mean, if I were to show you some of the properties, not just that I own, but some of the properties that people I coach own in industrial, some of the cap rates, Tim, are in the 20s.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the last one we just did was in Brockville. Do you know Brockville? It's a little town in Ontario.
I was born in Brockville, so yes, I know it.
You were born in Brockville? I think you told me that. Well, we bought the old, one of my clients bought the old Rona, 23.4% cap rate. He converted the Rona to storage containers and workshops, 23.4% cap rate.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that they're probably, what I want you to do is I want you to have something really sexy to offer. Okay. And to buy an old, I mean, there's lots of these old Rona stores, they're big, and they put these, 7 foot wide by 7 foot tall by 10 foot containers, lots of them in there, and they're galvanized steel, and they're just storage. It's like the mini storage business, but indoor is heated. I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon, Tim?
I said, that's brilliant. I love that idea.
No,
Just
no,
put
it's
this-
brilliant. And then the skin around the building are all these little workshops with their own entrances. So if you think about it, I'm going to draw it for you. I mean, it's not really that relevant, but I would like you to add this to your model, the industrial sector, because I think you'd really like it. So I'll just show you in the simplest possible terms.
I love that idea.
And when you're ready, we'll talk about it, okay? Some more, because I have some models that'll blow your friggin' mind. But so this is the Rona store here, okay? Can you see it? Can you see it? Okay.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what my client, and he's your age, Tim, he's a young guy. He's putting workshops around the skin of the building with their own ingress and egress, if you sort of see what I'm getting at.
Yep.
These workshops are anywhere from as small as 500 square feet to maybe the biggest is 1,500 square feet. And then inside here is just hundreds of storage containers. And the cap rate is 23.4%, right? And these buildings you can pick up for not very much money. All right. You know, because I mean, you know, Rona's a big company, and you know, they combined with, I think they were bought out by Lowe's.
Lowe's bottom out, yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a Rona here and a Lowe's here, they're going to get rid of the Rona, right? They put their competitor out of business. So this young fellow I coach, he's based in Carleton Place, so another little town, and he's in his mid-30s. He's worth tens of millions of dollars. He's a former student of mine from 15 years ago, so that's the only reason why he's successful.
Clearly.
No, he's brilliant, but he has, you know, I only started coaching him again about a year ago, and so he's going up around Ontario, these little towns, and he's picking up all the old Ronas and converting them to this. He's making a fortune, and he's worth a few tens of millions of dollars. And I said to him, his first name is Skylar. I said, Skylar, I mean, by the time you're my age, I don't know what you're going to do with all the money. So there are some other things you should add, but let me just explain. There's another part, another silo, Tim, that I think you should add other than just the product category. And that is that if you establish a private equity fund, and maybe you can do it with a REIT too. I don't think you can do it with a mortgage investment corporation, but I think you could do.
Yeah, we're not going to do a MIC because we have a.
No, I wouldn't do a MIC either. But
that doesn't suit our goals. Yeah.
I don't think so. But the other thing I would want you to consider is whether it's a REIT or it's a private equity fund, is doing what I did for Jonathan Westindy and Dream REIT. Do you know Dream REIT out of Toronto? DREA.
You heard of them,
They're pretty big. They're pretty big. And I'll just show you what they're working on.
I think they've got some properties here that are industrial.
Oh, they're big.
Orange sign? Isn't it orange sign?
All right, so
Branding is orange or not, but I think I've seen some other signs around.
just give me a sec. All right, so this is Dream. Let's just look at about. It's
Yeah, I've seen their signs.
I'm sure you have. Dream
Yeah.
is a leading developer of exceptional office and residential assets in Toronto, owns stabilized income generating assets in both Canada and the United States, and has an established and successful asset management business inclusive of $8 billion of assets under management across 3 Toronto Stock Exchange listed trusts and numerous partnerships. All right, so they're pretty big. I mean, for Canada, that's big. In the United States, it's still actually pretty small, but in Canada, that's pretty big. So I'll show you what they're working on here at Ottawa. What's it called? Zibi. Yeah, Zibi, Ottawa. So this is, oh, here's a nice picture. So this is a picture of Ottawa, and Zibi is an Algonquin word meaning home. And can you see all of these buildings here, boys? And on the island here? So this is about a $2 billion project, okay? And so what they did was they used the financial structure I call Mad River financing. Paul, did I ever talk to you about Mad River financing?
No.
What about you, Tim?
It's in the course.
I think it is. But anyway, I'll just go over it very quickly.
I'll just go over it again.
So we'll go over it very quickly so you understand how it works. So if you have a real estate investment trust or a private equity fund, this is probably the most profitable part of the business, okay? So what, if I go to a typical mortgage lender and I say, look, I've got a really great project here. I need $100 million. You know, a typical lender will say, well, I'll do a 65% loan to value mortgage. Okay, so I can get 65 million. And Bruce, you're the entrepreneur. You come up with the other 35 million. I go, oh, hang on, let me just check my wallet. No, I don't have 35 million. But anyway, at least I've got to start. And then I go to somebody else, you know, one of those, you know, private money guys, and they'll say, oh yeah, we'll give you a second mortgage, 12% interest rate, and so fees that you know come out of your ears, and we'll give you 20% maybe. So maybe we can get to 85% loan to value. What Jonathan West-90 runs a company called Windmill, and he was the one who tied up this property. So he had a piece of land. It's probably one of the best development sites in Canada. Right, you know, literally you can walk to the parliamentary precinct from this location. And you know, it's a $2 billion project, and he needed some help. So the structure that we used for Jonathan and Dream is Jonathan put in $5 million of equity, and Dream put in $5 million of equity to do this project. So it's a 50-50 joint venture between Windmill and Dream. The rest of the money that's required to get this project off the ground, which was close to about 1.1 billion, Dream loaned the project. Okay. Now, people say, well, that's ridiculous. Dream is putting in virtually all of the money, 99.5% of the money, and Jonathan's putting in 0.5%. Why should Jonathan own 50% of this project?
Because he's going to do all the work.
Exactly. The argument I made when we talked to Dream is that you do want to live in Ottawa for the next, you know, these are Toronto guys. Do you want to live in Ottawa for the next 10 years and get this thing through the planning hoops? You got to remember, this is in the middle of the Ottawa River. So he's got to deal, Jonathan had to deal with the National Capital Commission, the City of Ottawa, the City of Gatineau, the Province of Quebec, the Province of Ontario, and the federal government. 6 regulatory bodies, plus it's formerly Algonquin Indian land. And so there was really a 7th group that he had to deal with. I said, you're going to be here for 10 or 12 years. Well, we don't really want to be in Ottawa. You know, we like Toronto. You know what Toronto guys are like, the center of the universe. So I said, from Dream's point of view, here's what we're going to do. And this is what I'm recommending for your REIT or your private equity fund. Yeah, we'll do a 50-50 venture, or 60-40, whatever the number is. And we'll put the equity in as you described. And we'll do the, I'm talking about you guys, we'll do the rest of it as a loan. So it's 100% loan to value, okay? So the equity is really coming in as a loan. So you have a $65 million first mortgage, and then you have a 35% second tier or sub debt that's loaned by your REIT or your private equity fund to this project, in return for which you get 30, 40, maybe 50% of the equity. And Jonathan West-90, or the entrepreneur, gets the balance of the equity. Now think about it this way. Let's just bear with me, okay? I know I'm taking a little bit too long to get through this, but I really want you to understand why this is such a powerful model. Let's say I'm the entrepreneur, and you two guys are running your private equity firm. Do you have a name for it, Tim? I can't remember.
Not yet.
Okay, I'm going to call it Smart Capital. I just made that up. So you're running Smart Capital, and I come to you. I have a $100 million, residential project I want to build, or I want to buy and redevelop or renovate, animate. I said, I've got a $65 million first mortgage from Manulife, really good rate, but I need 35% from you, and I want it at 8%. I don't want to pay 12%. It's going to be in second place, but I wanted it. And I have $1 million of my own money I'm going to put in, and you're going to match that with $1 million of your money. Or maybe you only put in $500,000 of equity, I put in $1 million. So I would end up owning 2/3, you would end up owning 1/3. That's a negotiation, okay? But let's just assume it's 50-50 for now. So I need $100 million. I've got $65 million as a first from Manulife, and I got $33 million sub debt from you guys. And I put in $1 million of my own equity, and you put in $1 million. So we own it 50-50, and the project now is a go. All right. Now, that sub debt that you put in has a term on it. And let's assume that it's 3, 4, or 5 years. So you're going to make 8% on your sub debt for 3, 4, or 5 years, whatever the term is. And it's going to mature at the same time as the first mortgage. So you hope that Bruce Firestone, as the entrepreneur, will drive the value up of this property over the next 3, 4, or 5 years, pay off some of the debt, open up enough room to put a new first mortgage in, and to return the debt, the sub debt, to your fund. So your sub debt comes back to you, your 33 million comes back to you in 3, 4, or 5 years with an 8% coupon. That's okay. That's not that bad. But after your sub debt is retired and you have that money back and you can reinvest it somewhere else, you now own 30, 40, or in this case, 50% of this wonderful project, and your adjusted cost base is virtually nil. It's very low. It's $1 million on a $100 million asset. And that's called the Mad River financing technique. And the reason I called it Mad River is the very first deal I did like that was in Mad River, the United States, which was helping an entrepreneur buy a ski hill. So from the point of view of the private equity fund, or the Dream REIT in this case, once this project Zibi is finished, and they retain ownership of the commercial that they're developing, which is very substantial, and many of the residential apartment buildings, Dream will basically have an adjusted cost base of approximately 0, and they'll own 50% of these fabulous buildings. And they do very, very little work. The other thing that I put in there, which helped Dream, is I put in not only power of sale provisions, but foreclosure provisions, right? You guys are familiar that they're different, right?
Yep.
And what I said to Jonathan is I'm going to ask the lawyers who were working on this to put in foreclosure provisions so that if you screw up, Jonathan, if you muck up, Dream isn't going to power sale this. That would be ridiculous. You know, the worst time to sell something is when it's in trouble. Dream will simply come in and they'll apply to the courts for foreclosure. They'll take title. You'll be wiped out. I mean, Jonathan will be wiped out, and Dream will own 100% of it. Right. So you would only, your company, Smart Capital, would only invest in things that at the end of the day, if you had to own them 100% yourself and manage them yourselves, you would be okay with that.
Yep.
And so you foreclose on it. Dream will kick Jonathan out, finish the project. Then they can do whatever they want with it. Keep it in their portfolio, sell it, refinance it, whatever. They own 100% of it. Jonathan has nothing to do with it. So the entrepreneur has to really work his ass off. Otherwise, he's going to get kicked to the curb. So that is how private equity funds have worked for decades. I just call it Mad River, but that's what they've been doing for a long time. They've been putting really good quality entrepreneurs to work for them. If they screw up, they get their head sliced off, and private equity will take it in. They'll put their own management in place, their own property management in place. They'll nurse it back to health, and then they'll IPO it. They'll sell it, or they'll just keep it in their portfolio. And Warren Buffett has been doing a version of this too since I think the 1950s. And so I'm not telling you anything that hasn't been done before, but most Canadians that I talk to, and many of the Americans I coach as well, have no concept of how that works. And I'll just show you some of because I promised to show it to you, and I'm almost done, guys, is what are the, how do you make money on, as a private equity firm or as a REIT? First of all, people have to apply. Well, obviously, whether you're doing mortgages or just basic lending, obviously an application is necessary. But you will have a credit committee. You guys know that, and any application for a first mortgage will go through the credit committee, and they have to pay a fee just to apply. And if it's a second mortgage, again, a fee to apply. And then if they're saying, no, I would like to qualify if possible for Mad River financing, which is a whole different ball of wax, it's another application fee. Oops, I shouldn't have put this in there, excuse me. That was one of the companies I was coaching. And if investors want to actually put money in to your fund, they actually have to apply. You have to make sure that the money people actually fit your goals. Do you understand that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And something else you should know is that you guys are the prize. The money is not the prize. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of institutional investors who have lots of money, but they don't have, Tim, they don't have your skills or Paul's skills or knowledge of how to actually make money in the real estate business. You guys know that. They don't. So if you're doing a presentation, I coached up the guys that I just eliminated from the slide deck a moment ago. I coached up the guys, don't get on your hands and knees and start begging on the Zoom call, please put some money in, because, we really need it. That's not the right approach.
No.
The guys that I coach, they're really good. They're just like you. They're young people, and they really know the real estate business really well. They'll make a lot of money. So I wanted to make sure that we actually made the pension funds apply. And they didn't like it. No, we have an application form. You got to fill it in. But I do think that you should take that approach. I don't want to be cruel or anything like that or make fun of them. But money, that sits in an account and earns 1.1%, that's not very interesting. They need you guys to make 7 or 8%. And in the private equity fund on the Mad River side of things, they're making much higher returns, and so are you. And the next, there's only a couple more slides. So for this other company, other REIT that we just finished, or private equity fund we just finished doing, you need to hire a person to pre-vet, pre-screen, and filter applications, because you'll get a lot of applications. You guys will not have the time to do it. You have to develop these applications, right? So an application to put funds in, you should know who's putting funds into your private equity fund. And of course, you need to have applications for people who are applying for a first mortgage, a second mortgage, or in this Mad River thing that I've been talking about. You need to come up with a great name for your business and a great tagline, and you should hire a really good coach. If you know any, yeah, let me know. And how does the private equity fund make money? Well, the application fees that I talked about. The equity participation will probably be the most profitable part of your business. And then, of course, you already know the rest of it. The structured debt is really important, right? That you get a lift on your interest rates, you get your legal fees paid, you get your administration fees paid, and of course, there are renewal fees if they're renewing. And in terms of what you would expect to get from your private equity fund, and hopefully from your REIT as well, would be a percentage of the total funds. So let's say you raise $100 million and you decide your fee will be 2% of that. That would be $2 million a year that you would be paid. That would just come right off the top. You would also charge the fund your administration costs. I also wanted and did get in the last private equity deal that we did a percentage of the firm's revenues. So not a percentage of the profits, but actually a percentage of the revenues. And the reason for that is revenues are easy to track and profits are subject to accountants fooling around, right? You guys know that. I mean, a smart accountant can make profits appear or disappear. So if you're running a REIT or a private equity fund and you say, hey, we're going to get 20% of the profits, and you run into some accounting issues, which happens quite often. Those, maybe you made $30 million of profit, you're expecting a $6 million, check at the end of the year for you guys. And somebody says, "Oh, wait a second, there's this charge and there's that charge, and we have to do some other things. We should shift some expenses into this quarter and some profits into next year," and your profit participation goes to zero. So having a percentage of the revenues is defined, it's easy to understand, and that's another area that you should explore, in my opinion. So that's the basics of what I did. And I don't know if I've done 2 of them or 3 of them. I think I've done 3 in my career. So I haven't done like 20 of them, but I've done 3, and 1 very recently.
So one of my main questions, Bruce, is there somebody that you have worked with, or one of these companies that has worked with, that I like to leverage my strengths and not try and figure out a bunch of things that are time consuming and somebody's just better at it than I am? As far as a document and proposal writer is concerned, to be able to produce that slide deck or that documentation, because there are certainly some people that want that extra detail to help.
I would. I mean, right now I'm doing a little bit of coaching with Paul, as you know, and and really I'm not doing the coaching thing on this with you, Tim. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're going to need some help, but it doesn't have to be from me. There are other people that you can go to and who can help you with this. But you'll need obviously the slide deck. It has to be pretty sexy. You'll need the analysis, because I mean they will ask for the spreadsheets. But that doesn't go in the presentation. That's the backroom stuff where you put their analysts in the back room with one of your analysts, and they spend hours and weeks sometimes, battling over 0.2%. And then you will need a list of at least 8. If you're going to go the institutional fund, you'll need at least 8 major or pretty big institutions to join the call, so you can get 2 or 3 to commit. That would be the goal.
That would be the goal for sure.
Yeah.
So is there someone that you have worked with in the past that is great at putting those documents together?
Yeah, I do. He's a young man. I guess he's now 40, so he's not a kid anymore. I guess he's middle aged now, I suppose. But he's really knowledgeable in this industry, and he was very material in getting the last one done. His first name is Chad, and I'd be happy to introduce you to him.
Yeah, I'd love to speak with him.
Yeah, but you got to hire me as your coach first, Tim.
Yeah, I get that. He won't.
No,
he won't work without you, right?
Just look, I'm on the Freedom 95 plan, so I still work for a living. So I like working. I like coaching. I'm pretty good at it, but I do work for a living. So, that's just the way it is. It'll probably be like that for some time to come.
Couple years, right? Then you're done.
Well, I don't know. I mean, how long I'm 68. How long can I do it for? I hope, maybe I could do it for a bit longer. I hope, as long as your brain is okay, I suppose you can do it, right?
You enjoy it too much to leave it.
Yeah, no, I even if I had all the money in the world, Paul, I mean, I used to make, a 7-figure plus salary. Now I just work for a living. But even if I had a real shit ton of money, I still would do it, because I really enjoy working with young people like you, Paul, and I liked Tim's company. And now I've coached a few thousand people, so I've got this wonderful network across Canada, the United States, and it does, I think, tend to keep a person young, because you're constantly being challenged by these amazing young people. I mean, young Skylar, my former student, who's now close to 40, who's doing this and getting 23.4% cap rates. That's pretty cool.
There's a lot of that product out here in Calgary too. So we can.
Oh my God, Paul! I just, it's really exciting. Look, I mean, it's terrible that we've got thousands, hundreds of thousands, I guess, of people dying from this disease. But you know, there are also opportunities. I mean, you know, so you can't fault people like you, Paul, or Tim, or Skylar, or any of these other wonderful people. I mean, they're taking advantage of these opportunities, and I think they should. I don't feel guilty.
Yeah, neither do I. Bruce, just in terms of like the private equity relationships and the criteria that they look for, we kind of like, maybe when we do speak to this Chad fellow, he'll be able to give us a better direction as long as with you, in order to exactly pinpoint what they're looking for and then just presenting that to them. Because my struggle here always with the private equity firm is that, you know, they aren't necessarily looking for the business plans, but they are looking for a viable product or track record,
and for sure,
and an experience behind you and credibility. So that always starts with the relationship where they get to know you. So I think it's getting.
But the guys that just finished their funding, they were your age, and they did have a track record, no doubt about it. But they didn't have a track record, you know, at the level, say, that Dream is at. You know, and Dream is worth $8 billion today, plus or minus. Great, but they didn't start that way. So what I think, remember that word that I highlighted in my little presentation, differentiate. So I you know, please don't take this wrong, Tim, but I didn't think your silos were quite where they need to be. I mean, I added a fourth one, but I think I'm going to send you the link. I think you should replay this one more time if you're willing to listen to me a second time. And I think you could improve that, like the differentiation and the sexiness. I mean, I just can't emphasize that enough. Hard-headed bankers and pension fund managers, you can seduce them, you know?
No, I
don't
love that idea.
literally seduce them. I mean,
I don't know a whole lot
seduce
about
their money.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about industrial, but the things you just said, clearly there's a major opportunity there. And I think that,
you know, if you do hire me as your coach, which you don't have to, but if you did, we would certainly work on those silos and certainly on the industrial side too. And we'd come up with something that was different from what these guys have just done. They did their own thing. They have their own ideas. But in terms of theming, I think we could take what you suggested, and I think we could make it better.
And I think that's you know, major kind of differentiator as well. And those are different case studies and stuff. That would probably include storage as well, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Rental and all that. It doesn't have to be manufacturing necessarily.
Yeah. And I've got models that we could put in the storage industry, in the industrial sector, that are really good, and they're really new. And the idea would be, I think, there's no reason why you couldn't grow this. I mean, you'd start at 30 million, but it wouldn't take you guys very long, I don't think, to get to 100 million. And once you get to 100 million, you could probably get to you know, the low billions in Canada and the United States. You're young enough and you're smart enough to do it. To run a fund of $30 million is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, in fact, yeah, I've done a fourth one. I did one that is public now. No, it's not public, but it's quite successful, called Castle Bay Alliance, and it's quite small. It is around $30 million, and it's got to be now 6 or 7 years old. Very successful fund. But the guy who runs it, he's good with that. You know, he doesn't want to grow it any bigger. He manages it himself. He makes a lot of money doing it, and I can certainly introduce you to him. His first name is Sean, and I helped him with, it's called Castle Bay Alliance, and that's been pretty successful. But it's like $30 million, and you know, he's got all these different you know, but he runs it himself with like one assistant, I think.
Well, I think
I mean, you know, and he gets 2% of $30 million. What's 2% of $30 million every year?
600,000.
Yeah, 600,000. That's the base fee, and then he gets a percentage of the revenues, and he gets the lift on this and that and the other thing. So, you know, and maybe he has two assistants. I don't remember. I think his wife is one of them, and I think he has an admin assistant.
One outside.
You know, but you know, it's what I call a lifestyle business, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
You
He
know,
doesn't work 60 hours a week.
and Sean says, "Hey, I'm good, Bruce. I'm good. I'm making, low seven figures and don't have to really sweat it." And his loan losses are like negligible, like almost zero, because we put foreclosure in every friggin' agreement, Tim. And so every once in a while, somebody gets in trouble, and Sean and I help them. We just go and wipe the entrepreneur out. He's just gone, and Sean will fix whatever the problem is, put his own property manager in place, nurse it along. It's in his portfolio. And then, Sean isn't really interested in building a real estate portfolio, so he'll nurse it back to health. And after 2 or 3 years, when the markets are good like they are now, for this particular asset category that he's involved in, and then he sells it off and makes even more money, because foreclosure, you don't have to ask anybody's permission. How stupid is power of sale, guys? The worst time to sell in power of sale, you have to put it on MLS because it has to be exposed to the public, and you have to say power of sale. It stigmatizes the property. I mean, it's incredibly stupid.
Can't sell a distressed property for any kind of money. So
I listen to this, Tim. I just bought a property in Belleville, Ontario. It's a 12,000 square foot, 3-story building. It's got 6 apartments on the top floor, 3 apartments in the second floor, and 3 retail spaces. I bought it from a power for $280,000.
wow,
I'm not kidding. I'll show you the building.
that's incredible.
I couldn't believe it. You can't build a doghouse for like, it was 12,000. I'll show you the building.
You can't buy a condo for that in Calgary almost.
I beg your pardon?
You can't barely buy a condo
Oh,
for
you
that.
can't. You could buy a third of a condo.
Yeah.
No, I'll show you what we did. So I mean, power. And listen to this. The lawyer calls up my lawyer and me like 2 or 3 days before we're closing, and says, "Oh, by the way, there's $55,000 in property taxes owing on back taxes owing on it." I said, "Yeah, we know that." Well, we're not paying it. I said, "What?" Because the lender was stupid, right? And so I said, "Well, we're not going to pay." "Well, we're not going to close it." I said, "Well, hold on a second. Wait." I got mad. I don't often get mad, but I was a little pissed, and I didn't let my lawyer, Steve Shepard, say anything. I said, "Just a minute, Steve. I got this." I said, "Here's what's going to happen on the day of closing. We're going to tender the documents to you. You guys know what that is, right? When you're ready to close, your lawyer tenders the documents and tenders the money to the lawyer for the other side, for the seller. If the seller refuses to close, in Ontario, you can pay the land transfer tax, which we would have done. And then you could register your agreement of purchase and sale on title. It's like a lien." And so I said, "That's what's going to happen." I said, "In 3 days, we will tender on you. We'll present you with the funds and with and you don't close, you don't close. We will register it on title. And you will never, ever, ever, ever," I was pissed, "sell it to anyone else, because anybody else will have to deal with that agreement of purchase and sale. So, you'll pay another $25,000 in property taxes. You'll have to maintain the building for another year, 2, however long it takes you to decide. And then you're going to sell it to me anyway for exactly what we're going to pay you next Tuesday." And so you make up your mind, but you're not selling it to anyone else, and you're not pinning us with $55,000 in property taxes. If you wanted us to pay the property taxes, you have to disclose that and put it in the agreement to purchase. If you've got a problem with this, you talk to your realtor. And don't forget. And then I smiled at the guy and I said, "Don't forget, your realtor has errors and omissions insurance." So he got off the phone in a real friggin' hurry. And I bet you that he's going to sue that realtor, but that's okay. Anyway,
that's between them.
What's that?
But that's between them to sort out.
Oh, they got to sort it out, not me. I don't care. So I'll show you the building here if I can find the pictures. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. So it's right on the main street in downtown Belleville. And
it's a beautiful building.
No, it's fantastic. So it's got this shitty aluminum siding, which we're actually in the process right now of taking it off. And then they put this goddamn brick veneer. Let me show you the actual historic pictures of it. It's a beautiful building. Let's see if I've got one that'll show you what it looked like in this. Yeah, here it is. So this is what it looked like. I guess this would have been the 1950s, right? So you can see it has 6 apartments up here, 3 beautiful apartments here, and 3 stores, right? And so these dumbasses, sorry for saying that, but they are kind of dumbasses.
They got rid of the brick, put this ugly colored siding on there.
You have this historic building that's beautiful, and they put aluminum siding on it. Are you fucking kidding me? So that's coming off, and this shitty brick veneer is coming off. We paid $280,500 for it, which works up to $23 a square foot.
That's unreal.
Yeah,
that's freaking real.
So another possibility for you, Tim, if you don't mind writing it down in terms of investment, and this is kind of the sex appeal, is I run a group that's called Main Street Makeovers. Okay, and I'm by far the poorest member of this group, by far. But write it down, Tim, okay? So that's another silo we should probably add to your model, because I know you like the residential stuff. This group has been going into small towns across Canada, the United States, and buying properties on main streets like this one for very little money. And we're not getting cap rates like Skylar with 23 or 24%, but we're getting cap rates of about 14%.
Fantastic.
And which is very good in residential. And it's called Main Street Makeovers. And we're literally, like in Belleville, my wife and I bought this one, but the group, which is made up of guys who some of them are worth a few billion, some of them are worth, hundreds of millions, and Bruce and Dawn down here. But, I think we'll end up with 4 or 5 buildings on the same street. So if you were running a REIT or a private equity firm, you could, oh my God, you could go into, 100 different towns and cities across North America and buy the main streets, because the main streets have these wonderful historic buildings and the young people want to live there. And even older people want to live there. They want something that's walkable.
Be close to everything.
And be close to everything. You can have a coffee shop.
My dad just moved into a little apartment in Toronto because it was in Brampton. Now he can walk everywhere.
Do you know what the cap rates are in Long Beach, California for residential investment?
0.8%.
That's a very good guess. Between 1.1 and 1.2%.
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't buy a property with that,
And the tenant rules there.
I mean, it's so stupid. I coached a couple of young guys in Long Beach, and they were buying properties at 1.1. I stopped that. And they shifted into the industrial sector, because Long Beach is a very big port city. It has, I think, the largest or one of the largest ports in the United States. And they're doing industrial warehousing now, and their cap rates are great. They're not 24% like Skylar, but they're in the 10, 11, 12% range instead of 1%. So if you asked me to do a little bit of coaching, another silo you would definitely want to pitch, because it's sexy, it's new, and it's very, very successful. We've got examples of it, one of which I just showed you. The other thing that has the Main Street Makeover model has going for it is that small towns anywhere within an hour to an hour and a half or 2 hours of large cities are booming right now. This work from home thing is likely to stick around, and
people out of the urban center.
And so if you can make Silicon Valley, San Francisco salaries and move 2 hours away, and you only have to go downtown San Francisco once a month, no big deal, right? So you can move to a small town. You could rent a nice apartment in a renovated building like this one that I just showed you, for not very much money. Do you know what a 2-bedroom apartment in the Mission District in San Francisco rents for, Tim?
No.
Between $7,500 and $8,500 US a month.
Well, that's worse than New York.
It's much worse. And so, now mind you, if let's say, Tim, you were a young techie and I was a young techie, and you're making, $250,000 US, I'm making $250,000, and we're sharing a 2-bedroom apartment as roommates, you're paying $37.50. I'm paying $37.50, but you're making $20,000 or $25,000 US a month. It's not the end of the world. You're paying 12% or 13% of your salary for your apartment. So these guys can afford it. But if you decided to get married and you have a couple of kids and you're sharing a 2-bedroom apartment, well, that's not going to work. So now you can work from home. You can go to a smaller town within 2 hours of San Francisco. You can get a very nice home. You can raise your family there. And once a month you have to go downtown. But did you read that Shopify is closing its world headquarters?
I saw your article about that. Moving out.
Yeah. So you know Shopify, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they announced about a month ago now that they're closing their world headquarters and they're not going to reopen it. They found that work from home has been saving their people probably a 2-hour commute. Even in Ottawa, we have 2-hour commutes, 1 hour each way, so 2 hours a day. Imagine you're freeing up 10 hours of your employees' time, and the wear and tear from driving your fucking car for 10 hours a week in traffic is horrible. And they found that productivity went up. So I talked to Toby Luque and his right-hand man there, Harley Finkelstein, when they called me about this. And yeah, they just said, fuck it, we're not going back. So if you can make $250,000 a year and pay $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month for a nice home, that's a real good trade.
100%. You're going to take it.
One quick question: what's the preference, private equity versus a REIT in your opinion? What would be the
well, I would want to, I'm not really a lawyer or an accountant. I'm just a lowly engineer. But REITs are compelled to, I think it's 90% of what of your cash flow you have to distribute to unit holders. I think it's 90%, something like that. Private equity is much more flexible, at least in my experience. So you and Paul could sit around with your lawyer, your accountant, and your coach, and make you have. I mean, private equity. I'm not saying there's no regulation, but it's very, very, very flexible compared to REITs. At least that's my understanding.
The private equity makes sense to me as long as you got the institutional money coming in there and they have another angle.
Yeah, but even rich families, the other source for you guys, Paul, would be family offices. I coach a couple of family offices. One real estate they're both actually real estate fortunes, and they have what a family office is, right?
Yep. Yeah, we have a couple.
Yeah, so they have. They're fairly small compared to the American family offices, which can involve hundreds of billions of dollars. But they both of them are in the $2 or $3 billion range, and those guys, Paul, cannot invest $50,000 or $150,000 or even $500,000 at a time. When you have to deploy $3 billion. If you were to deploy it even at $500,000 per investment, it would be completely unmanageable. So the very minimum, I think, is 10 million, and even that might be too small. So I think the other source that you could go after would be the family offices. So it can be individuals too.
Right. Then again, I think it comes down to having those relationships and having the right projects that they go after, especially here in Canada. I find people very low risk. Very,
very low risk, which is another reason why I might not emphasize the development silo, because people do recognize that. I mean, ask Paul how easy it is to do land development in White Rock.
I lost all my hair because of it.
Yeah, I don't have any hair either. But that's because of hockey. But Paul, it's you can back me up here. People do understand the risk. They do. So if you were to do Main Street makeovers, I'm just saying, Tim, if that was one of your silos in the residential sector.
Well, I like that because it's if you're buying people low replacement costs and
you have much lower costs. You have much lower risks. Your land development, new construction, that is a really time consuming, and you see, the neat thing about the Main Street makeovers is that's, in a way, it's not real estate, it's a business, because land development is all about local knowledge. You got to know the politicians, you've got to know the zoning code, you've got to know the plans people, the building branch people. You know, you've got to know a lot about a town to do that. You know, so land development you could probably do in 1 or 2 cities, maybe 3, but probably not, probably 1 or 2. Whereas Main Street makeovers you could do it in 100 places, because it's a business model as opposed to land development, which is very idiosyncratic. So I probably would change those silos a little bit, but you know, I'm just here to help it. If you decide you don't like anything I said today, that's okay too. You're the boss.
You're bang on, Bruce, about that. I have some experience in that, you know, asking for money for development. I have some family friends that are that have a lot of money behind them. I think they're almost approaching $1 billion, and one thing that they don't get into is development.
Absolutely not. So if you bought an industrial portfolio and you animated it, you bought some Main Street makeovers because you wanted exposure to the residential market, these are very low risk, you know, and the three of us, between the three of us, we do know how to animate those things and to get those cap rates to, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%, and maybe on the industrial side to these crazy numbers that we're seeing, you know, 24% cap rates. If we do that, your fund will be a $1 or $2 billion fund in no time, and people will be coming to you and say, hey, Paul and Tim, what the fuck? How did you do that?
Right.
Because they don't know how to do it.
That's what we want.
But they don't know how to do it. Here's what a typical fund manager says. Well, you know, we should go and buy that portfolio of 5,000 units with a 3.3% cap rate. You know, it's bound to go up. You know, maybe we'll get 4.5 in another 10 years. What the fuck?
Yeah, seriously.
You know, really, that's your best shot?
They have too much money to deploy, and they don't know what else to do with it.
Yeah, I understand that, but we do.
It's Warren Buffett's fault. Warren Buffett went on CNBC and said, I buy 10,000 homes in the US if I could afford that, if I could get the management. And then all these hedge funds went into all the sexy markets, and Phoenix drove up prices, Vegas drove up prices, and they had no idea what they were doing.
So anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful. Tim, you know, I don't charge very much for my coaching. You know, I used to charge $1,500 a month before COVID, but I think I'm charging $850 a month. I think that's what I'm charging Paul. I just reduced the rate when COVID hit because I thought, you know, people needed a break. So if you wanted some coaching, you'd have to budget $850 plus HST for that. It's not very much.
You're right. It's not very much.
No, it's not very much.
Working on that other coaching client, by the way. He said around the 14th, so that's tomorrow. I'm calling him to get him on board.
Oh, that'd be awesome. You know, I love doing this, and like I said, I'm probably the cheapest, highest return asset you'll ever have.
I believe
I
that.
can vouch for that too.
I do think so. So listen, guys. Tim, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? What did you want to talk about Brooks? Did you want to talk about Brooks? What did you want to talk about there? I've got another 6 minutes.
Just some ideas on how to potentially raise some capital for that guy. That what we're looking for is a $200,000 budget to fully animate that property, redo the common areas, put a tech package in there. I budgeted most things out. I did send you the plan, essentially, that I was going to do with that property. That's what I
remember that. So what is the question?
What ideas do you have to incentivize an RSP lender to put that capital in so I can get all the work done and recap the building?
So is this your building, Tim?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to recall it. What's the address again?
It's 1003 Castles Road in Brooks, Alberta.
1003. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, so let's look at it again. Oh, I remember this one. Okay. All right. So I'll show
I got the plan. I just need the cash.
Yeah. So okay. So okay. Tell me again what you're doing with it. How did you buy it?
Oh, I already own it. I've had it for 2 years.
Okay. So and you want to raise $200,000.
Correct. So I can build sheds, put tech package in.
Oh,
clean
yeah,
up-
yeah, it's cool. Okay, I do remember it now. So you need, so what's your first mortgage?
850, call it
And what's the fair market value of this place?
1.1.
1.1. And you want 200 grand. Why wouldn't you do an RRSP mortgage?
That is what would be ideal here. Yes.
So I work with a very nice older couple, older being younger than me, but still a lot older than you, Denise and Stuart McPherson. And they specialize in this, in RRSP mortgages. They're very good at it. And if you send me an email, after we hang up here, unfortunately, I've just got to go and do a little bit of coaching. I got a client having a bit of a crisis, so I got to get off the call here in 4 minutes. Yeah, he's getting divorced, you know. So I'm not a life coach, but I'm going to listen to him for half an hour. I mean, when you coach people, Paul, you sort of become friends with them, right? In a way, I feel that way anyway about you guys. Yeah, so he's pretty upset. Turns out his wife was cheating on him and he didn't know. So.
Sorry to hear that.
Oh, I'm not a life coach, so I can't really help him, but I can be a sympathetic ear for half an hour. Just to put in an email to me, the address again, and just the address, and say you need a $200,000 RRSP loan. I think they charge ridiculously low rates. I think it's 8% for a second, maybe it's 10%, but it's in that range. And it's 1 or 2 year terms, and they'll go up to 100% loan to value.
Okay, I'll send you an email to that effect.
And I'll just introduce you to them, and they're super, super, super nice. They've done RRSP loans for me and for other people, if you think about it, most RRSPs are horrible. The returns are terrible. So if people can get 8, 9, or 10% on a from a nice person who's reliable, that is the main test, Tim. It's not really whether the building is this or that. Okay, they're investing in you, the person, right? Do you understand?
The execution.
The execution. So they want to make sure that if they give you the $200,000, unfortunately, they had a client in Quebec. They did one of these loans, and instead of putting it was about 250,000. Instead of putting it into the property, he paid his credit card bills. So actually, he paid his wife's credit card bills. So they would prefer if you didn't do that.
We won't.
No, I'm sure you won't. So
they can crunch it out for us if they want.
So just tomorrow, you put the address in and say, Bruce, introduce me to Denise and Stuart. And then you say, I need $200,000. This is what I'm going to use it for. The building is worth about 1.1 now. It's got an $850,000 first. I hope to get it to be worth 1.4 or 1.5 million in a year. 1.5. So in a year from now, I will put another mortgage in place. Maybe it's a year and a half from now. I'll take them out. That's all they need to hear. And then I'll introduce you. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Bruce. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation tomorrow. Did you know that Tim is doing a presentation for the ROI group tomorrow, Paul?
Yes, I saw that, and I'm going to be on it.
I'm really excited to hear it. I think, Tim, that model has legs. And Tim, you know what? I might put that model into your private equity fund or your REIT. I might. It's a very good model. There's no reason that I call it Little Steps Academy. I don't know if that's the right term, but there's there's no way that
any other REITs doing it.
Your REIT or your private equity fund, you could have 5 or 10,000 of these homes across Canada, the United States, easily. I mean, how many? You were talking, I think, about 70 or 80 in Alberta.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is the group home scenario.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But so I want you to really think those silos through, Tim. Okay. I got to go. I'm going to miss them otherwise. See you guys. Paul, great to see you. I'm glad you joined us.
Yeah. Likewise.